Hi Mate Nation, it's Purple Mate here. Blue Mate is entering double digits very soon and he requested a Fortnite cake. So this is my video showing you how to make this cake. Okay, so to start with, we've got this 7-inch hemisphere cake tin and I've greased it. I've put some strips of baking paper so I can get the cake out afterwards, and notice it's on a little bit of tin foil so it doesn't wobble away. For the cake itself, I've got 200 grams of softened unsalted butter, and I'm going to add 200 grams of caster sugar. Like any other cake, I'm now just going to cream the two together. When it's nicely creamed together, we're going to add our eggs one by one. Egg number 2. And egg number 3. So now that's all combined, eggs, sugar and butter, I'm going to add the dry ingredients. We want it to be a nice chocolatey chocolate cake, so I'm going to add 50 grams of cocoa powder. Grams there, and then we make up to 200 grams with our self-raising flour. There are different schools of thought when it comes to flour and how much mixing you should do. I don't use the mixer when I put the flour in, it's all by hand. I have my trusty wooden spoon and I shall just get combining. So my mixture here is a little bit stiff. I'm going to add a little bit of milk just to loosen it up. So it's a little bit looser. It's still quite stiff because we're going to have to carve this cake afterwards, but don't worry. So here is my mixture in my tin. I'm going to put that in the oven, fan assisted oven, about 130, and that's going to bake for about an hour and 20 minutes. So the cake has had about an hour and 15 minutes now. We're going to get it out and see how it's going. Give it a quick test with a knife. Oh, it's still very soggy. I'm going to put it back in about 10 more minutes. So now I repeated the same process and I've ended up with 2 hemispheres of cake that are cooling nicely. We all know chocolate and orange is a classic combination, so we're going to work on the orange butter icing and the orange syrup to keep the cake moist at the same time. I'm going to grate the zest of the orange in this bowl for the icing, and I shall put the juice in the saucepan to make the syrup. So here is the zest of the orange and the juice of the orange. I'm going to add a sprinkle of caster sugar to the orange juice to make the syrup. Let that warm gently, all the sugar will dissolve and it will be ready. So now for the butter icing, I've got 150 grams of unsalted butter with 300 grams of icing sugar, and I'm going to combine them very gently. So as this is a Fortnite cake, I'm going to add some blue food colouring to the butter icing just to give it a tint, make it more exciting. So now I have my butter icing ready and my simple syrup. I'm going to turn to the cake. So now my cakes are properly cool, I'm going to put them back in the hemisphere cake pan, and I'm going to slice off the top so it's nice and flat, and they shall fit together beautifully. So now we have a sphere. This is the point where we need to start building our cake now. I've got these two cutters, and these are going to help us create the shape of the porte-fort. We need to do the one on the bottom first and get the cake onto the board, so then we can work up from there. I've decided this hemisphere is going to go on the bottom. So I use my 8cm cookie cutter. I'm going to position it right in the middle. Give it a little push. And this is going to be the place where I cut. So the mark I've made with my cutter is the mark I am going to slice along with my knife, just to flatten out the bottom. There it is, flat. So now I'm going to put some butter icing on it and put that on my cake board. So now the icing is set. We're going to use our 8cm cookie cutter again, and we're going to make the mark, slice off on the front, side, the back, the side and the top. So now I've squared off all the faces. I use the 7cm cookie cutter, and I'm going to make the mark where I need to, and then I'm going to scoop out the middle part just with a spoon. So here now I'm getting more of the shape for my porte-fort. I'm going to very carefully pour some of the orange syrup we made earlier into these bits that I've carved out, just to keep them nice and moist. So now, using a combination of palette knives, spoons and other utensils, I'm going to cover the whole thing in butter icing. So I've very haphazardly covered the cake in butter icing with the palette knife. I'm going to go around and try and make sure the features are defined. So now you can see the little cutouts for the porte-fort symbol spaces are slightly more defined. But when the buttercream is very soft like it is, it's hard to work with. So I'm going to refrigerate this for a couple of hours before I come and do coat 2. So now the cake's been in the fridge, it's had 2 layers of butter icing. I'm going to roll out my 2 packets of grey fondant icing and cover it. So now it's at this stage. I've managed to get the fondant on relatively smooth. Got a lump there, but that's going to be sorted out in a moment. I'm going to trim off the excess, and then very carefully, where I've got my cutouts, I'm going to press the fondant in to make the indentation. So now I've trimmed off the excess grey from my porte-fort, and I've rolled out my light blue. I'm going to use my 6cm cutter to cut out 5 circles, but before I put them on, I'm going to use an edible pen to draw on the porte-fort symbol. So here it is now. I've put the porte-fort symbols in the holes. Now the porte-fort pictures I've seen, there's details where there's join lines, I suppose, between, so I'm just going to use a spoon handle and I'm going to gently put those lines in. So there are my lines. I also made little indentations just by poking my finger in. I'm going to make these little bits into balls, pop them in, and then they'll become the screw heads. So now I'm just on to finishing touches. I'm going to use this edible metallic powder and make it all silvery. So here it is, covered in the silver glitter, just to make it slightly more metallic.